Hello, assalamu alaikum, good morning, khush aamdeed, ji aaya nu, goeiemorgen.
Pakhairagale, ni hao, chune shumme, washmale, ohio, gonzaimes, guten morgen, hola, boyor, privyet, kaifahal, hale shumachatore, ahlan wasalan, marhaba, buna, mucho, gracias, swabi up, and a very amazing good morning to everybody who's tuned into PTV World and are watching World this morning alongside the very fantastic, the very fabulous, the very superb Shiza Hashmi and Shahzad Khan on a Tuesday morning from Islamabad. Hi Shiza, how are you today?
I am doing absolutely great. Thank you for asking, Shahzad, and what about you?
Well, I think I'm doing great as well, and thank you very much for bringing the coffee for me too as well. Because, ladies and gentlemen, so this is what happens. So whenever she's running late, she's actually going to text me to bring coffee,
Yeah.
which is not very often.
Yeah.
But I usually, kind of text her and tell her to get coffee for me because today, especially, I actually was not able to find my wallet. So that's
Oh.
why I actually had to say it to you as well.
No, that's totally right. I mean, that is what team is for, right?
Yes.
Teamwork is, everything. But Shahzad, other than that, can I be honest over here when
Sure,
we
go
are,
ahead.
here speaking about so many different things on our show today, but still, today being 8th of October, it is a little traumatic.
It is, and ladies and gentlemen, it was very hard for us to actually figure out that, what should actually be the best way to get started with the show. Where I and me and Shiza, we were in constant conversation. We said that, it's such an important day
Yeah.
to even raise awareness at this point of time where we are in 2019 because we ourselves have experienced that there's not much which has been done after the 2005 earthquake struck, and it was a disaster, ladies and gentlemen. It was a natural calamity. But then at the same time, whenever we talk about the countries which are actually developed and we follow their footsteps, they actually talk about disaster management and preparedness. And this is what we have picked up on today as well. Because
Right.
more than 3.5 million people were displaced, with hundreds and thousands of people who actually lost their lives as well. Where, if I go back in time, Shiza, I still remember back in 2005, it was my first ever semester
Yeah.
in the university. I was on the third floor of my university where, the buildings started to shake. And all of a sudden, I could see my head of department running downstairs as well. And I
Really?
thought that this is the time to run away for your life. And that's what happened. And later on, we got to know that over here in Islamabad, Margla Heights,
Right.
the
Collapsed.
entire building collapsed as well. And then, later on, after 2 or 3 or 4 days, I must say that, the data actually started pouring in as well, letting us
Right.
know that, the kind of situation there was. But then at the same time, you have witnessed the entire thing firsthand as well. How was it for you?
All right, I did actually. I was in Murray because my dad was posted over there. And Murray happens to be, very close to Muzaffarabad and Balakot as well. So imagine whatever was happening there was happening at a very strong magnitude in Murray. And it was, although a Saturday, we were in our classes, of course.
Yeah.
I used to study in Presentation Convent. Imagine my school fell down, my class specifically, 2 of my class fellows got injured, fractures in their neck and hospitalized for so many days. My house fell down, entire community where, the officers were living, everything was broken, collapsing in front of our eyes, walls cracking open. And to be honest, we didn't know even as a family where to go or where to look up to. Although, I mean, imagine my dad being the strong figure in our house and we're all 5, 6 of us looking up to him, what to do next. And even he is confused because none of us were prepared for it. And ladies and gentlemen, the only point of us remembering all of those things that happened on the 8th of October, not only to us, but to more than, like Shahzad mentioned, hundreds of thousands of people who have been through this, is so that we can actually see where we have come, how far we've come in terms of disaster management. Well, we do have a very important and informative report about this. Let's take a look at it. And then when we come back, we will talk about how far we have actually come.
Remembering 8th October 2005, the day the earth shook. On this day, a decade earlier, Pakistan was hit by one of the worst natural calamities to have hit the region. It struck around 8:52 a.m., hitting the northern districts of Azad Jammu and Kashmir and the adjoining areas of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. In Azad Jammu and Kashmir, Muzaffarabad was the hardest hit, mainly because the epicenter of the earthquake was just 19 kilometers, 12 miles to its northeast. At least 79,000 people were killed and more than 32,000 buildings collapsed in Kashmir, with additional fatalities and destruction reported in India and Afghanistan. The quake also destroyed 600,000 homes in Kashmir region as well as Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province leaving 3.5 million people homeless, making it one of the most destructive earthquakes of contemporary times. Experts say Azad Jammu and Kashmir lies on land beneath which the Eurasian and Indian tectonic plates collide. The geological activity born out of this collision is the reason for the unstable seismic activity in the region. 8th of October too was a result of this activity. More than 70% of all casualties were estimated to have occurred in Muzaffarabad, while Bagh, the second most affected district, accounted for 15% of the total casualties. The devastating earthquake left multiple psychosocial effects on the survivors. A large number of survivors are still suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, complicated by other psychiatric and psychosocial symptoms. While it was hard for families to come to terms with the death of loved ones, others have had difficulties coping with injuries or loss of employment opportunities.
Ladies and gentlemen, to go through over all of this again and again, there's a reason why we're doing it. I know that uh, it's not very pleasant to see at all of these things as well in the first place, and it's because of the fact that for all of those people who might have lost their loved ones, it is very devastating. And our job over here today on World This Morning on PTV World is to make people aware of the fact what are they actually supposed to do if such a natural calamity is actually going to have a hit on them as well. And whenever we talk about disaster management, I think that the first ever thing anybody's going to talk about is preparedness, and then comes on mitigation and then reconstruction and whatnot. So today we are actually going to focus on disaster management and preparedness in the first place. But then following that, we are actually going to talk about solutions, and we are actually going to talk about organizations playing their role, because we have quite a lot of civil institutions as well. But one way or the other, this is a fact, ladies and gentlemen, we actually have to pay a rich tribute to all of those people who participated back then as well. And I think that the armed forces did a great and a wonderful job, because it was just the armed forces who were actually prepared. And I'm very sorry to say that institutions like National Disaster Management Authority or other institutions didn't even exist back in 2005. So it definitely did get, it was an eye-opener for all of us. But where are we in comparison to 2005 to 2019? That's what we're going to find out, and we're going to make sure that you are so aware of all of these things that you should actually know what to do when such a thing happens.
Also,
And
Shazad, can you recall the amount of people coming up for, helping others? I mean, in
Yeah.
terms of philanthropy as well, diaspora living abroad as well, Pakistanis from within Pakistan. I mean, hundreds of thousands were ready to give up anything and everything they had, and everyone was unified. I mean, it was
Exactly.
just amazing to look
And
at
Chiza, I
it.
still remember that me and my friends, we actually volunteered to help with the rebel in F10 as well, because
Really?
the
That's
towers has
amazing.
collapsed as well. And it was a wonderful feeling to see that Pakistan actually emerged being on top in terms of philanthropy as well.
Yes.
But to talk about all of these things, ladies and gentlemen, we have been joined by some very amazing guests. They've taken out time, and they actually understand the importance of this day as well. So we'll be in conversation with them. With us, ladies and gentlemen, we have actually been joined by member DRR, which is Disaster Risk Reduction, and he's the spokesperson for NDMA as well. He's none other than Mr. Idris Masood. Hello, sir. Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Walaikum salam. Fine.
Thank you very much for joining us. It's wonderful to have you. And alongside Mr. Idris, ladies and gentlemen, we have actually been joined by somebody who's actually going to let us know that, post-trauma, what are you actually supposed to do, PTSD. And these are real-time issues. And I've been an advocate for all of these issues as well, that people really need to speak up, and we really need to give them solutions. To talk about all of that, we have been joined by a psychologist. She's none other than Dr. Misbah Khan. Hello, assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Walaikum Assalam, very well, thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. It's wonderful to have you alongside Dr. Misbah. Ladies and gentlemen, we have actually been joined by Head of Disaster and Preparedness and Response Unit, Pakistan Red Crescent. He's none other than Khwaja Maqsood Khan. Hello, sir. Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
Walaikum assalam. Hello, good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. And last but not the least, ladies and gentlemen, we have been joined by a hero. And,
A real-life hero,
Yeah,
I
a
mean, to be
real-life hero. And the sole purpose that I've actually labeled her as a hero is that she was actually affected by the earthquake, which took place in 2005. And right after the earthquake, 4 or 5 days later onwards, she found herself under the rubble. And she figured out that she will not be able to walk again for the rest of her life. But what she did with that disability is something everybody needs to listen
She
to.
literally turned the tables to life.
Exactly.
I mean.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've actually been joined by CEO Human Resources Private Limited, and her startup's named is SMT, which is management training, self-management training.
Yes.
She's none other than Miss Romila Hamid. Hello, assalamu alaikum, and a very warm welcome. You are a real life hero. And I actually want to give you a big round of applause for what you have done.
Thank you
You're
so
a great
much.
person. Everybody's going to take inspiration from you. How are you?
Yes, I'm good.
Thank you
so
very much for joining us.
having me here.
I'm very sorry. I know that we're actually starting on a very good point, having you over here in the studio, but I will love you to go back in time and let us know what actually happened.
I most of the time says that telling your story is not such an easy task to share with people, the pain you've been through and everything, the situation. So I would love to take all of you back in 2005.
Sure.
It was a normal sunny day. Suddenly the earth started trembling and I found myself inside debris. And within a few seconds, I just realized that I have become disabled.
Okay.
I wasn't able to move from one place to another, and I was just calling for the help. My family and everyone was just in a worry in the situation that they were looking for the help. My mother, she was calling for help. She was calling our name, Rumela, Lubna, and my sisters. I lost two of my very dearest sisters in this disaster.
I'm so
My
sorry to hear
personal
that.
injury is not only the loss. We can recover from such type of things, financial loss and everything. But the relationship we don't have in our life, we can't even cherish the relationship before that. We understand the value and the things we have in our life. So the moment I felt that when I touched my body for the very first time, I felt that it's totally a different thing. I was just asking my mother what's happening here, and why my body is not moving, and even I don't have sensation in my legs. And suddenly she told me that, Beta, you are disabled now. You can't move from one place to another, and that was the situation. And I think I could say easily that it was the most devastating day in my life, and the biggest natural disaster in the history of Pakistan, which occurred in Azad Jammu and Kashmir. And 200,000 people died, and majority of young women and girls especially, they sustained multiple injuries and became physically disabled.
Right.
I'm one of them. And spending 3 days and nights in open sky in my father's labs, heavy rain, a lot of pressure, depression, frustration, and everything. We have nothing to eat, and so after that I was lucky to be included in the batch which was shifted from Pakistan to UAE for further rehabilitation process.
All right.
So I went there and I just received treatment rehabilitation process from Dr. Garrison, who came from UK to Al Jazeera Hospital UAE for the rehabilitation process of earthquake survivors. So during my rehabilitation process, I wasn't sure about the disability fact. I was a normal child, and I have not ever thought that living a life with disability is such not an easy task.
Right.
So one day he came to me and told me that, Rumela, I want to share one thing with you, that you are on wheelchair for the rest of your life. I felt at the moment that my life is ended here. Your family, the depression, your relationship, when you see the sister, she is in front of you, you can't even save her. She is bleeding and she is crying for the help. Another sister, she was inside the house and we couldn't even save her. And that person who came to me and said that I'm on the wheelchair for the rest of my life, there is no reason to survive. Why I'm here in this world?
Yeah.
So at that moment, I just asked him, what's the next solution of this problem?
Yeah.
And he told me that disability is not a burden, but a different lifestyle.
Right.
So you can live it fully. So the reason behind my startup came from the idea self-management training that Dr. Garrison had just taught me how to live a life with disability on wheelchair.
Romela, that is absolutely amazing and inspiring to listen to, of course. And thank you so much for being so brave and courageous enough to share all of this with us.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. A lot of people out there, probably thousands of them, similar to you, have these questions that you have in your mind. Like, how could you help your loved ones or save them in such a moment of disaster? But that is why we have this amazing panel over here. We're going to discuss these things, and then we're going to get answers to these as well. All right, so here's the thing. I mean, we all know that there are definitely some 5 points we have to look at when we're talking in terms of getting prepared for any other disaster. So let's talk about the first one being.
Yeah, first one being plan, ladies and gentlemen.
Right, it's all about planning. So, sir, let me start with you. All of us know ERA, E-R-R-A, however we pronounce it, came into being after the 2005 earthquake. When we know that Pakistan happens to be situated on such a place geographically, okay, of course, we didn't have such a huge level of disaster before, but why were we not prepared for it? Why didn't we have anybody to look after such a disaster?
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I must accept that. And we were, in fact, it was not only in Pakistan that we had institutions that lacked such capacity to deal with such huge disasters. It was almost in most of the countries, particularly in the region.
Okay.
That is why we had an understanding and leadership summit in Hyogo in January 2005 in Japan,
Okay.
where they came up with the Hyogo framework for action. And that framework for action was for 10 years, and the first priority of that was that the member countries agreed to establish systems, disaster management systems that would cater for the whole spectrum of disaster management, starting from the mitigation, preparedness, prevention to rescue, relief, and rehabilitation and reconstruction. So unfortunately, it was in January, and we were one of the signatories. We were thinking about this, but unfortunately, we learned this the hard way when the earthquake of 8th October 2005 struck us. At the same time, we immediately rushed and raised Federal Relief Commission.
Right.
And that was later on converted into the National Disaster Management Authority,
NDMA, yes.
NDMA, and we had a legal structure and institutional structure whereby the National Disaster Management Commission, headed by the Prime Minister, is at the apex.
Okay.
It gives policy direction, while the National Disaster Management Authority is a secretariat to that and an implementing arm of that commission. The same system has been replicated in provinces and districts. Now, ERA was a specific organization that was raised at that time to undertake the rehabilitation and reconstruction work at that time, and it has done a wonderful job. Though now the government has decided to subsume that into National Disaster Management Authority, because we are working for the integration of not only legal structures but institutional structures also. And ERA completed out of all 100% of those projects conceived at that time, it has already completed 73% of projects.
Oh, that's amazing.
And another 15% are under completion, while 10% have been dropped. And it has been given UN Sasakawa Award for that, for Build Back Better. And you go and witness the reconstruction there. It's of a high quality.
So here's the thing. I'm so sorry I have to cut you over here, but sir, of course, all these things that you've mentioned are amazing. I mean, definitely, I really wish that we would have been prepared with that beforehand, but unfortunately we were not. That's all right. But only, a decade afterwards, this was 24th September, just last month, almost 15 years after the 2005 earthquake, a similar earthquake, thank God, not such a big magnitude, but it did hit similar areas, Muzaffarabad, Jammu and Kashmir, Jhelum. Were we prepared for all of that?
We can't predict earthquake.
Of course, yeah.
Science has not yet been able to predict that. But you would have seen definitely the response that we had in 2005 earthquake and now.
Okay.
We immediately rushed there. We had rescue and search operations there. We didn't had urban search and rescue teams at that time, 2005, when we had Margala Towers collapse.
Right.
We now have 6 urban search and rescue teams. They participated in search and rescue, and alhamdulillah, we restored communication links immediately. We reached out for relief of the people. We provided them with temporary shelters immediately, and those who needed immediate medical help were shifted, and now we are, alhamdulillah, in reconstruction and rehabilitation.
Well, that's great. And there's one thing which I actually need to mention over here, that thank you very much for being honest. I know that it was very unfortunate that we actually had to learn it the hard way, but I'm going to respect that you were honest and you let us know that there was no such thing which existed back in 2005. But I'm very quickly going to move on to Khwaja Saab over here. Now, Khwaja Saab, whenever we see such disasters and whenever we speak about preparedness, I think that it's the laws which needs to be introduced in terms of safety of the people and the community as well. And then, there are other organizations and bodies which are developed so that they can be there. Now, do you think that, and I do not really believe that it is fair enough for only NDMA to be over there on the ground,
Right.
or be present, or to be looking after entire Pakistan. It's a bigger responsibility, and I think that the community needs to play their role as well. So how many laws have been introduced since 2005? How many new bodies have emerged to lend a helping hand to people who are in distress?
Okay, thank you. First of all, I would like to mention that the previous question, since 2005 to till date, we have learned a lot. We have traveled mild in preparedness, and although we need to improve, there is always room at the top to improve, but we have traveled a significant distance in the right direction. And if you see, there were a lot of bodies, but now we have NDMA as a main steering body at the national level. He's coordinating all the efforts, and we have, like, Pakistan Red Crescent is working auxiliary to the government, where and when required, we provide a response. We have a countrywide coverage. We have offices in all main locations of Pakistan, in AJK, Punjab, Sindh, Balochistan, even in GB. We have over, DP stock, disaster preparedness stocks, prepositioned at key locations where we can mobilize that. If you see the recent example of Mirpur, we have deployed our team within 1 hour. They were providing first aid, emergency rescue with the government, and they were providing, the psychological first aid to the people, handling the trauma, because we have already programs in that field. We support of ICRC and IFRC. So we have a motto to first to reach and last to leave. So we try to, always live by that.
That's amazing.
And now coming back to this, that if you compare with 2005, people from all over the world come to support Pakistan. From Turkey were one of the first, and then we have Netherlands and other. Now Pakistan sent their team to the other countries. Like I've been deployed many times I'm the member of the regional disaster response team in Indonesia and other countries. So this is what we have learned through the AGs and developed our capacities.
Exactly.
So if you see the recent response, as I mentioned, we were so fast because we cannot predict disasters, but we are trying to cope up the adverse effect and minimize, the human suffering. And we are trying to improve every day, every coming day, and this is our vision, to eliminate the human sufferings. So together in the guidance of the government and NDMA, we are trying to improve things every day and every passing day.
And that's great. And ladies and gentlemen, we need to be honest over here. And I think that I feel great, if we have to do a comparison between the situation at hand in 2005 and in 2019. But Shiza, let me tell you. So what happened that, I think that 2 or 3 years ago, I actually happened to visit Azad Jammu and Kashmir as well. So one of my relatives was getting married over there. I went over there. So what they've done is that when we talk about reconstruction, so they do not allow anybody to build larger houses over there now. So what it is that you build, like, the government actually constructed these houses for all of the native people. And so it's a two-room house, and that's about it. So, and it's on different places as well, so 2 rooms over here, 2 rooms somewhere other. So the planning is going on, which we were talking about. But there was one thing which was missing, that after the disaster in 2005, I think that nobody figured out the kind of psychological impact they're going to have. Imagine Romila over here mentioning that, she actually lost her sisters as well, which still saddens her when she speaks about it. And Misbah, which is why I'm going to ask you that, thank you very much for you mentioning that, even psychological help is given for people who are out there as well. But usually people are not even comfortable, when such a calamity strikes, people are not comfortable going towards or asking somebody to give them psychological help. But what they're concerned is, okay, whether our loved ones are good, whether they're doing fine or not, whether they have food to eat or not. So how do you think that people really need to look after all of those people who've been through that trauma and then probably let them live their life at the fullest?
Okay, firstly, I would like to say thank you to Romela for sharing a very brave story and commendations for her hard work. Yes, it's very important that we do have, as my colleague just said, psychological first aid. We provide the physical first aid or the medical first aid, but the psychological trauma is very long standing. It keeps on recurring, triggering flashbacks and stuff. PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is a disorder which can actually impact the person quite later in life. It's like, okay, at that time, because of shock, sometimes you don't register what's happened because of the calamity is so huge and the system that your psychological system cannot maintain it. So
It's hard to acknowledge at the
Yes,
moment.
exactly. It's like, you know, becoming numb, emotionally numb. So what happens is a few years down the line, something could trigger it, like a car crash or something like you know, probably a child, you know, being ill or anything like that. So it's very important that we have community-based mental health programs that help people recover the psychological trauma. The thing about natural disasters is there is no one we can be angry at. You know, it's like, who do I point the finger at? You know, who do I blame? And also for people like, I was also here when this happened, and I was stuck in a situation where I had to choose from either running out the room or leaving my daughter in the room. And I actually did, for a minute, ran out, and then I had to come back in because the human response is flight or fight. And I said, no, I can't do that. So my own personal story was that, and I still remember that day. And I think, you know, for the people who actually did respond to their human needs and did go out and run and lose their loved ones, that sense of regret and guilt will stay with them for the long time. And seeing your loved ones pass away in front of your eyes is one of the most excruciating, painful experiences ever. And so it's like layers. It's about loss. It's not just one loss. It's not physical, financial. It's emotional, relationships. Like Shiza shared her story, seeing your home crumbling in front of you, your belongings being snatched away. It's the vulnerability and also the violation of your space, you know, and all of that is not easy to comprehend. Yes, I understand this physical safety, the physical well-being, you know, all of that comes in, but hand in hand, psychological well-being, psychological treatment do need to be, you know, spoken and shared and offered appropriately.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for explaining it to everyone so beautifully, because this is where, you know, community involvement comes in as well. Like you mentioned, it's not just one person who has to deal with the trauma or something. Of course, there's a certain part community has to play as well, and that is actually the second step in terms of disaster risk management we're talking about, you know, involving communities in reconstruction in so many different areas as well. My question after we watch this very informative video, another one again, is going to be to all these amazing guests that, of course, you know, like you mentioned, Shazad, a lot of people were rushing to the sides and bringing food, bringing clothes, bringing whatnot. But when I went to the open area camps, you know, girls were literally talking to me and telling me, we don't need your clothes, we don't need your food, we literally need a shelter, we need our families back. So how can we actually make an effective involvement of communities? This is what we will talk about, but after a very small video that we're going to share right now.
Let's do it.
A disaster is a serious disruption of the functioning of a community or a society, causing widespread human, material, economic, or environmental losses which exceed the ability of the affected community or society to cope using its own resources. Over 96% of all deaths from natural disasters occur in developing countries. Natural disasters kill 1 million people around the world each decade and leave millions more homeless each year. Disaster preparedness and management refers to measures taken to prepare for and reduce the effects of disasters. That is to predict, prevent, and mitigate their impact on vulnerable populations and respond to their consequences. Disaster preparedness is a continuous and integrated process resulting from a wide range of activities and resources rather than from a district activity by itself. It requires the contributions of many different areas, ranging from training and logistics to healthcare and institutional development.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, so that was a brief report on disaster management and preparedness, which I think that plays a very pivotal role in saving a lot of lives if you are prepared, only then. But other than that, you know, before going towards this report, Shiza actually wanted to ask a question, which is going to be similar for all of our guests over here. So Shiza, please go ahead, shoot.
All right, so in terms of, you know, engaging and involvement communities and reconstruction in different aspects as well, how do you think we're doing with that? And what are some of the things that we must focus upon, like in terms of teaching our communities, if this thing happens, this is where you should call, this is who you should involve? Please.
You know, this is National Disaster Management Authority's mainstay, that we are primarily a coordinating body. And we make sure that everything that is channelized to the affected areas is through us, so that we direct them to correct places, we tell them what we need, we avoid what we don't need.
All right.
And about the communities, it's heartening to inform you that we have a National Disaster Management Plan, which was devised with the technical expertise of the Japanese, and it's for 10 years, and one of its main component is communities-based disaster risk management.
Oh, okay.
We recognize communities as the first responders, and we have initiated projects and interventions throughout the country, wherein we have partners like Pakistan Red Crescent and other organizations, Aga Khan Development Network, who have NGOs and INGOs. We have a national humanitarian network, which is a body of all the national NGOs, and there is a national humanitarian forum, which is a body of all INGOs who have a ground presence, and we implement these community-based disaster risk management programs through them, where they train them in community response and also knowing what hazards they are facing and what practices they need to adopt to be safer and resilient.
Exactly.
Okay, that's
Thank you very much for saying that. And adding on to that, ladies and gentlemen, I still believe that there's a lot of work which needs to be done in terms of building codes, because I don't think that people over here think too much about, earthquakes and natural calamities and disasters or flooding. So, these are all the issues which we do witness once a year at least. Even recently, we have seen the earthquake as well, and every summer there's flooding as well. So, how do you think that we're going to make sure that the government is actually going to enforce the laws onto the people, onto the community, that these are the building codes, and nobody should ever construct beyond the limits or whatever the figures are said to be? So, sir, I'll start with you.
Good question.
Okay, basically this comes with the sensitization of the community.
Okay.
Like if we have a policy, then we are supporting the government in awareness raising and sensitizing the community. If there is something, this is betterment for the community.
Yep.
This is what they have to realize. And to support this initiative, Pakistan Red Crescent, apart from the disaster response, we have a preparedness component.
Yep.
We have local and international partners which are supporting, or like we have a first aid program in more than 90 districts in Pakistan. Then we have a restoring family links program that is across the country again. Then we have different disaster preparedness and response program in the local community, where we train the communities how to respond in an emergency situation.
Okay.
Then we are trying to link that with the local disaster management authority, that is DDMA, that may be TMAs. So we are linking them. Then we are improving their coordination. It's very important to coordinate before, during, and after the disaster.
Yeah.
So this is very critical, and this is what we try to sensitize in the community, and this is the regular programs we are running throughout the country.
Yeah.
And we are building our base. Like we have more than 10,000 volunteers trained
that's amazing.
in all over Pakistan, and then we have 1.8 million volunteer base all across the Pakistan, because like we deploy our staff, but they are coupled with the local volunteers, because they are the mainstay in the local communities. We are trying to build their local capacities, and off and on we provide them technical support to refresh their memories, to build their capacities, because if anything happens, the first one are the local ones to respond. Then there will be coming the district one, the provincial one, and the national one.
Right.
If you see the recent example of Mirpur, we had a local trained volunteer in the first aid and RFL services. They were the first one to reach. And then there was aid from national headquarters and provincial headquarters. This is what we are thinking, and we are working on it. And we have different programs all over the country, and we are trying to increase every year. And I would like to mention the support from Turkish Red Crescent. We have in country, we have Danish Red Cross, we have German Red Cross. We have a very important component of climate change. If you see, we have climate-induced disaster in this country, and we are, we have the climate hit area, and we are most vulnerable to that. So we are signing MOUs with the government and other institutions to, develop a knowledge base in the local community, how we are, damaging our, if you see the last UN Assembly speech by the Secretary General, he said that we have struck the nature, now they are
It's going to
striking
strike back, definitely.
striking back hard. So we have to be prepared. So this is you already mentioned, preparedness is a key thing to look into, and we are working on it.
And this is what I wanted to talk about, ladies and gentlemen, that, whenever such a calamity actually hits us, what happens is that, there are long-term projects. So this is one of the phases as well, and this is one of the part of preparedness, where you actually have to stay on top of all of these long-term projects,
Right.
which Khwaja Sahab actually mentioned. But since you even mentioned about capacity building, so I think that, Rumela over here is a true example of developing capacity within your own self to do things by your own self as well, which was great. But what I wanted to ask you before I move on to Dr. Misbah over here is that, for somebody who's gone through so much pain and loss and whatnot, how did you even gather yourself to reach to a point where you thought that, okay, if this happened to me, and, I read it, I even saw your story where you said that, I'm not disabled, it's just a different lifestyle. How did you get to that point?
So for every person who faces sudden disability, it's not easy for to recall himself back on the situation where he or she was before. So I would say that the emotional in touch of your family, the support from your the people who are in surround of your area and the teachers environment, that makes you a lot of strong. So once you realize that when there is a will, there is a way. And the one thing behind yourself is your own capacity.
Yeah.
That if you think that if you are on wheelchair, if you are disabled, or when you face sudden disability, or when you face sudden trauma or anything in your life. So there is a situation to live with that is the only way to believe in yourself.
Right.
How you see yourself in the society as a person or as a burden. So when I became first time disabled and I realized that people see me as a symbol of sympathy. They always told me that you can't do anything. You are a girl on wheelchair with disability, rejection, no, and everything. I faced a lot of things such
Who were these
discrimination.
people?
You
They're
even
so
applied
mean.
for jobs, right?
Yeah. So behind these situations, I just realized that there is only one way to survive in the society is to say no to every rejection and every negativity.
Yeah.
Wow.
I just told the people that I can do each and everything. So when you are strong mentally, physically and emotionally, you can achieve everything.
That's great.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And of course, again, it takes a lot of courage to actually take all that time and come out even stronger. Romela, you're doing amazing. But Shazad, one thing that really, I don't know, bothers me or intrigues me, when we look back at 2005 in terms of communication, I mean, we were not that swift or strong. Now we do have Twitter, we do have social media. Within seconds of earthquake, it was all over my Facebook, my Twitter. That is how I found out, to be honest. But back then, don't you think we should have had a stronger system of data collection? I mean, in terms of, where what went wrong, satellite imagery, yes, consensus, of course, that how many people actually lived in that area and how
that's
many people
awful.
were effective. And, Misbah, even in terms of medical data collection as well, because for further uses, why do you think, first of all, that is important to have?
Consensus or data collection?
Yeah, both of them.
Because the thing is, until we know what the imagine, like satellite imagery, you have like colors. The red zone is where there's a denser population, so you will actually put the organizations will put more efforts in there. They will look at the pinpoint of where the actual risk management is.
Right.
I would just want to say a bit, not the psychological, but we should actually be talking about earthquakes as we talk about dengue.
Absolutely,
I mean,
because
there's
we're so
more.
prone to
There's
it.
more likelihood of us being affected. I've been affected by earthquake, and touch wood, I've never been, affected by dengue yet. So the thing is that we should be able to talk about schools. Have a small, short message for children. If this happens, if you see the walls or the floor shaking, do a poem or something. Make it memorable so children can learn and they can protect themselves. If you look at the statistics of the people who passed away during the earthquake, mostly it was, as Romela said, girls. Children. She was young. She was a teenager.
Right.
So children get. They look for the parents. Where's mummy? Where's daddy? Ammi, Abu, where are they? And that is when they get caught up in the disaster. So we should be focusing on the most vulnerable communities, older people and children.
Children,
And
absolutely.
census or consensus or data is because then we will have the idea of who is at risk and who is the most vulnerable, and how can we invest the resources appropriately and accordingly to that space.
Yeah.
Right, that's so important, and you actually gave a very good idea of how you can train children on how to react on earthquakes, like probably tell them a rhyme or something they can do whenever it hits. We do have a video of some other things, the things that you should do when or if an earthquake hits you.
Yeah, and before even we move on to that video, ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to add, sorry Shiza,
Yeah.
that I'm very sorry that I'm actually saying this on national TV, but it definitely has an impact on my heart even till date, because I happen to know a lot of my friends whose parents were working for NGOs, and I could see that the tents and ration packs and a lot of things which were actually supposed to go to the people who were affected, they actually kept a few of those things at their places.
Really?
It was very sad. I know they still use them for camping and whatnot. And yeah, it was very damaging for me to know that these are the kind of people I'm surrounded with. So, ladies and gentlemen, we actually need to keep an eye. We need to ensure transparency as a community as well.
Of course.
And as Ms. Bai even mentioned as well, that data collection is important. So I'm just going to go back to the point where you said that we were giving them clothes, and they said that we do not need more clothes. So imagine that the same amount of money spent on clothes could have actually gone to somewhere better, because of the fact that we didn't had any figures. So all of this actually happened. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, as ma'am said as well, we have actually made a video which is actually going to let you know what to do when such a calamity strikes. Let's take a look.
Disasters affect millions of people each year on personal, business, local, community or national level. The golden rule for successful disaster management at all levels is to increase awareness, develop actions, plans and practice them. Waiting for a disaster to take place is not the right time to plan. Actions to keep in mind when planning to mitigate disaster and resources to help prepare. Be ready at home. Prepare, plan and practice. It is important for individuals and families to increase their awareness, get educated, engage in preparedness, conversations, and stay informed. Be ready at work. Does your office have an emergency and evacuation plan? Have you communicated it? How do you stay in contact with local authorities and determine what to do? Answering these questions are detrimental to dealing with any disaster. Know your community's vulnerabilities. Understanding what types of disasters are most likely to affect your location will help you inform your plan. Learn about agencies and roles. Preparedness is a shared responsibility among all government agencies. Conduct a risk assessment to identify potential hazards and consequences and follow through with action to mitigate risks. Inform your plan with statistics. Reduce disaster risks and build resilience by understanding key data. Plan for all types of risks. Emergencies are not related to natural hazards. Some are man-made, for example fires, industrial or transport accidents, oil spills or explosions. It is important to be prepared for all possible risk scenarios. Role of non-governmental organizations is also key to every community's preparedness, assisting with disaster response and recovery.
All right, so this was, I think, very informative, and I think these were just the key points that each and every single one of us should know in case, God forbid, any calamity does hit.
Exactly.
So towards the end, ladies and gentlemen, since we are talking about disaster management and risk reduction, I mean, the last stage is coordination among communities, of course, among authorities as well. Like we already mentioned that how Red Crescent already was on point. I mean, this time, within an hour, you were there to provide relief. So how can we go about it in terms of, unifying government, non-governmental organizations, local people of the area? Please go on about it.
And very sorry, sir, adding on to that, not just that, so how do you coordinate even, because there are too many other bodies on the ground as well, so it is very essential to coordinate amongst each other, divide areas. Do we do that? Do we have that in planning as well?
We have actually an institutional structure that is called National Emergency Operations Center.
Okay.
It is linked with the Provincial Emergency Operations Center and then to the District Emergency Operations Center. That National Emergency Operations Center is supposed to have desks and all the coordination of all the agencies relevant. So we have all agencies there. We don't need to go and talk to others. We just ask them there, this is what we need, and it is done. Then we have a National Disaster Response Plan also, which clarifies roles and responsibilities of each one of us, and we roll it out immediately after that. So the first point that I want to come on the data collection. This is the most important priority under the Sendai framework for action also. We need to have risk knowledge. So we are doing multi-hazard vulnerability risk assessments where we tag each one of our housing facility, of our health facilities, people, how many children, how many boys and girls, all that for contingency planning also,
Right.
for risk reduction also. Why should we be erecting structures in the floodplain, which is 10 years return period or 50 years return period? So we have marked those areas in 13 districts, and the plan is to continue with the whole
Oh, that's
country.
good,
Yeah,
that's good.
it's up to the union level.
Well, that's great. And thank you very much for joining us. Well, it was wonderful to have you. It was wonderful to be in conversation with people who are actually doing something very amazing for the community and for the country at the same time. Please keep on doing this amazing work. And we definitely love you. And Romela, you're a real-time hero. And
Absolutely.
we definitely take inspiration from you. And we want you to, keep on rocking and make sure that the world is a better place for people who are
Yes.
actually existing and people who are actually going to come as well.
All
But
right.
for everybody who's out there, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to repeat those 5 points about preparedness. Number 1 is plan, plan, plan. Number 2 is involve communities in reconstruction. Then
Yes.
there's stay on top of long-term projects, gather data, and coordination is essential. Ladies and gentlemen, all of these things which we have discussed today is because of the fact that nobody needs to go through such losses, which are going to have an
Right.
impact on them for the rest of their life. It's better to be prepared, and it's better to be prepared efficiently.
Absolutely. So on behalf of my entire team, on behalf of the entire PTV world, our heart goes out to all the families who did suffer during this unfortunate calamity that happened on the 8th of October. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all pray together for all those who suffered. And I really hope, inshallah, it doesn't happen again. But unfortunately, since we are situated in such a place on the earth, we should definitely be, ready for anything that comes our way.
Exactly.
If there's anything you need to write to us, write on our Facebook page with the name of,
World This Morning,
on Twitter,
World This Morning without a G,
Daily Motion on YouTube.
World This Morning,
And if you've missed the show, it's all right because you can catch the repeat at
5 past 11 p.m. tonight. Till the next time, 1, 2, 3. Good
morning.
Thank you very much.